I think what I'd like to do is first just kind of start off and talk to you a little bit about kind of how I grew up and where I am and what really prompted me to get involved with the 70. As many of you know, I was one of the lucky men in the world today in that I had a terrific role model as a father. A lot of guys that we talked to had some pretty rough childhoods, some pretty rough upbringings as far as dealing with dads and father wounds and some of the things that can occur throughout your life. But my dad was a good Christian man who brought us up in a Christian home. We knew the Lord very early in life and gave us a foundation, both my mother and father, gave us a foundation of a godly home, what a godly home should look like, what a godly family should look like, and the importance of prayer in our lives and the importance of relationships and who you associate with to who you need to share your faith with. But of course, like all young folks, I went to college and had a great time and enjoyed myself immensely, and thank God I had that foundation of that Christian upbringing and that home life to bring me back to where I needed to be a more of a godly man and to be that spiritual leader that my father was in our home. And it was easy for me because I had that model. However, I didn't use that model. I didn't think I needed that model. That model was something that I had experienced, but hey, that wasn't my model. That wasn't who exactly I was. Well, in moving to Sarasota and getting involved again and getting the children back into a church environment, I was introduced to the men's ministry program through the Episcopal Church that we attend, and found that model of manhood, of being that spiritual leader of the family. I had a great teacher, but I wasn't doing it. So I just made up my mind that I was going to need to be that spiritual leader in my home. I needed to be that spiritual leader for my children, for my wife. I needed to start loving her unconditionally. I needed to start loving my children unconditionally and being more involved in developing them in Christ, because that's my job, that's my charge. Well, along came Equipping the 70, along came Episcopal Men's Ministries. We decided to start a men's ministry group at our church, and I thought I could do it by myself. I thought, well, I can do this alone. I've got some guys that kind of come around, but I can do this all on my own. Well, you can't do it on your own. You have to get yourself a team put together of other men. And I knew I needed that team, but who is that team going to be? So I went to Equipping the 70 seminar and realized that Jesus really is the perfect disciple maker. You know, in business, we look at folks that we can model after. We look at who's successful in business. That's who we want to model ourselves after. We spend a lot of time in business looking at those models and trying to develop business and be profitable. Well, to be a disciple, all you really have to do is look at what Jesus did. In Luke 10, verses 1 through 20, when he sent out the disciples 2 by 2, the 70, Jesus himself, as he was talking to the woman of the well, the Samaritan woman at the well, what a wonderful example of discipleship that was, in that they came together and he had conversation with this woman. They had some common ground. Basically, they were both thirsty. But he started explaining the living water to her and how that water is there and you'll never be thirsty again. And this intrigued her. And he also kind of called her out on her sin, but he never condemned her. And I think that's where we have to be very careful when we go out and we try to disciple. We all have dark places in our lives. And as it's said many times, it's not for us to be condemning of those dark places. It's for us to bring the joy and hope that there is a living water out there, there is a Christ out there, there is a different way to live, there's a different way that you can bring Christ into your heart and into your families. And it's a transforming process that only those that have been through it can really feel and describe. But through that woman at the well, Christ basically transformed a city, because she went back and said, my goodness, I have been with the I Am. I have been with the Son of God. This is what he did with me. This is what he explained to me. And there's about 8 steps in that story of the Samaritan woman that are perfect in getting to know somebody, developing a relationship with somebody. Now, getting back to the 2x2 and the 70 and equipping the 70, I find a real power when I'm with another brother in Christ. When I'm by myself in a restaurant, very seldom will I ask the waiter or waitress, is there anything that I can pray for you about? Even though I pray for my meal by myself. But when I'm with a brother, I have an accountability to that brother. I have a feeling of power that comes over me that allows me to step out of my box and say, you know what, I've got all these tools. I've got all of these equipping tools. I know how to evangelize. I know how to defend my faith. I know how to share my story. How can I develop a relationship with this person right now, right here, as Jesus did with the Samaritan woman, and say, is there something that we can pray for you for?